Here's the next one. No need. Some people may say to you, I'm not sure if I need this. I don't know if this is the right opportunity, but sometimes we have to understand that a no-need objection is our own fault. If we're not using the necessary tools, if we're not doing something that's what we call in our industry duplicatable, or something that's going to ensure a quality presentation. That's why we have tools. That's why I have outlets for exposure. Here's something else. When a prospect says to you, I'm not interested, here's my response. May I ask why not? Here's another one. Today, this week, this month, or what? It's a universal rebuttal that you can use for just about every objection. Now, I know how they feel, and Mike said, feel, felt, found, but here's something you can utilize. I know how you feel, John. When I first looked at this opportunity, I felt the exact same way. But you know what? When I realized that the average person that's making a great deal of money within this company, I realized that I had the same opportunity as them. And I found out just how interested I was in joining this company, gaining financial freedom. And if they're not interested, if they tell you that again, here's another response. Do you know somebody who may be? You see, you can lead to a referral network. A good friend of both of ours, for Michael and I, a seven-figure income earner for many, many years, Dave Savola, his response, and I just stole this from him, but it's something he's taught nationwide for many, many years. When somebody says, you know what, I'm not interested, he says, I'm so glad you said that, because this business is perfect for people that are uninterested. Now, you think about that. That's really going to get somebody's attention. But here's what he leads into. We got a great referral program. And if you can just lead me to people that are interested, an interested party, you're going to benefit. Folks, it boils down to this. You may not like the cheeseburgers at McDonald's, but you could certainly own the franchise and take the profits. Let's talk about timing objections. These objections can be tough. We talked about this earlier, but here's what we have to remember. We're looking for a business partner. We're looking for somebody that we're going to spend quality time with. We're going to build value. Obviously, collectively, we're both going to win. But if people have problems at home, if they have situations on their, in their home or their business, or there's too much on their plate, we need to respect that. And I always share with everybody a great question to find out if the timing is good. And here's what you do. Is this a good time for you to start a business? Great question to ask for any prospect, because, think about it. They're going to tell you immediately, Mike, I am ready. I am ready right now. I want to start this week, this month, or whatever it may be. Another way to ask that is, are you looking to start your business this month? Something you might want to think about in working through the timing objections, look for telltale signs. How are they concentrating on what you're talking about? Are they participating, within the conversation or the exposure process? Sometimes just remember in life, timing can be everything. Mike, I know you got a few comments on this.
Well, it's that's just really good stuff, and it goes back to exactly what you're saying. What I'm hearing you do is obviously you try to empathize with what they're feeling, and you turn around, you ask them a question back, you answer their question with a question, and that's vitally important when you're talking about objections, so that you make people think about what they're saying and not just use excuses. And you want to be real about that, and you want to understand that. So it goes back to listening more than you speak, so you know what they're saying. It goes back to never interrupting the person or assuming anything, what the prospect is saying, and always ending a question with a positive question, does that make sense, or would you agree, or the things that you're sharing with us. One of the things that I use is, pose the objection that I don't have time, as you're saying earlier. What I really see someone saying is, if they don't have time, what they really mean by that, in my opinion, is, can I do this with the amount of time that I have? Is it really worth it? Is it worth my time? Am I going to be able to get something out of it? And I always use the response by saying, listen, I appreciate the value of your time, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, but let me ask you this. What if I could show you a proven success system that helps you leverage your time and build your business that could create an additional income stream as much as $500 to $1,000 a month or more while investing only 8 to 10 hours a week? Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, would that be worth your time? And so what you're trying to do here is just make a nice, smooth statement and then turn around and ask that question. I think that that's just a great way of approaching objections on a massive scale, and you could really do that with anything. If you sit down and think about the different approaches and different objections that people have, Mike, I think that that's vitally important. So just remember that, listening more than you speak, don't interrupt people, listen to what they say, try to feel what they're feeling, and, empathize with them, and just become what I call a personality chameleon. Change your colors with where they're at. If they're in a slower mood, don't go after them like you're super duper excited. You got sometimes you gotta, match your energy level with their energy level in order to really maximize your time with that person. So objections are just good. They're good signs, and just understand how to really come back and handle those, and you'll become very successful. So let me turn it back over to you, Mike.
And Mike, this next objection you and I both perfected many years ago, and I call it the spousal objection. And this is funny because, many people can relate that, our attitudes when we get involved with the business, and when you have a spouse involved, you can always tell because they support or they do not support that movement, that business, so on and so forth. But you may be dealing with spousal objections and you don't even know it. So I want to talk about that for a few minutes because some people, here's the sad, but this is true, some people fear putting their spouse through another failure. They may have joined a company in the past. They may have marketed a product or service and something didn't work out. And it was frustrating on their marriage. It was stressful financially. And they have this fear. And here's all I can tell you from experience. One of the best ways I know how to handle or to prevent this objection to literally step in front of the opportunity include the spouse. When I talk to a prospect, eventually in the conversation, what I might say is your spouse going to be involved as well? Are you going to do this part-time together?